I think the most common challenge that organizations face when trying to adopt DevOps practices is regression. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Is you make 2 steps forward and 5 steps backwards, and part of that is how do we maintain our ability to control risk within this new context, because the risk profile is different. Because the risk profile is different, we need different tools and techniques to manage that risk. In the old days, I'm calling it the old days. It might be the current days for lots of organizations, but in the old days, we would spend a bunch of time designing our product, right? We would design the architecture, we would decide what we're going to build, we would list out all of the features, and then we would work towards some kind of release date of our product. And then once we get to that, close to that release date, once we've delivered a body of features that make sense, we're going to test those features. So we have a different group of people who are testing and validating those features. I mean, it is still quite common to have separate test teams to engineering teams rather than a combined arms, combined engineering force. And then once they've done those testing, it's probably handed off to some kind of operations team who are going to deploy it to an environment. And then something like UAT is going to start, where you have some kind of additional validation of what's going on in the product. And then once all of those things are successful, then it moves on to maybe deploying to production or staging, or you might have other environments. That the most common traditional model is deploy by environment, and that fundamentally doesn't work within the context of DevOps. It's going to slow you down. It's not going to get you the key thing that DevOps that's trying to bring to your business is high quality, flexibility, adaptability, and your ability to validate assumptions, right? We have an assumption that this feature is going to be valuable, but in order to actually validate it, no matter how much stuff we do on paper or in labs or in studies, right? No matter how much of that stuff we do, the only place to really validate that feature is in production. A great example of that is Windows 8, right? Microsoft spent hundreds of millions on user experience, on labs, on flying people into labs to video them using the product, performing certain tasks, and then getting feedback from them in interviews or sitting with people that are using the product, all of those types of things. They did all of the things that you're supposed to do, and still they ended up with a product that bounced off their consumers from a usability perspective. And that is because of that production problem. One of my favorite people, Brian Harry, who used to run the Azure DevOps team, he made this comment that I loved, and it was, there's no place like production, right? The little red shoes, there's no place like production, because no matter how much testing, no matter how much validation you do, especially if you're in the service world where you're building a service that's got thousands and thousands of customers using the same service, no matter what you do, you cannot simulate production. You just can't. It's not possible to simulate production. We can make it. Maybe we can do some stuff, but that's that common challenge is, how do we address these things as that world is changing? Right? We've no longer got 6 months or a year, or the Windows team used to be on 6-year delivery. That's how long it would take them to get a new version of Windows out the door. From starting writing the code to it actually being released to production was 6 years. They've got 6 years to do testing. I have a colleague from Boeing, and he talked about one of the things that he saw as a problem And he said, Boeing don't build quality in, they test quality in, right? So you've got all of this aggressive testing that's happening as part of you're building something, and then you're testing it. Oh, right, it failed. Right. So what do we have to do differently? That is quite often you have to do that with some manufacturing stuff. These days you've got simulators, so you can digital simulators, so you can do a lot more. But in the software world, we don't have to suffer from that problem, right? We don't have to spend lots of time building a rocket to put it on a rocket pad and launch it, and then it explodes, and we look at the telemetry and figured out what went wrong. We don't have to do that. We're building software. We can get that software out the door as quickly as humanly possible with the level of quality that we need to maintain our business brand, protect our business, protect our consumers, and protect our producers, right? With that level of quality, and we can get things out the door as quickly as possible, test it in the real world, test it in the market, find out how accepted that thing is in the market, whether it's increasing our market or decreasing our market, and then adapt around that. And that's part of that DevOps story, is closing those feedback loops. Not just identifying those feedback loops and eliminating waste in the process to get it to go through the process as quickly as possible, but actually closing the feedback loops. Not just collecting the data, closing those feedback loops. So the two big common challenges that I see is, one is that huge one is closing the feedback loops, but the other one is actually how do we change the way we understand our risk profile and how we mitigate and organize around risk within that context, and then how do we adapt to the things that we see in a timely manner. Those are the two most common challenges, and those are the things that we can help teams, products, and your organization deal with and figure out how to do better.